doctor comes up and looks at Frazier. I think it's going to be over. It's all over.
That's what everyone believed in that moment. Frazier's finished, but Manila had other plans, because right after this, Joe Frazier fires a left hook so vicious, so out of control, that for the first time ever, Muhammad Ali actually thought he was going to die in the ring. And the wild part? Ali survived this fight because of something Frazier never saw coming. Fight of the century. The Philippine Coliseum, they renamed it the Araneta Coliseum just for this fight, turned into something way worse than just a boxing venue that October morning. The air conditioning broke down, and with that aluminum roof trapping all the heat like a giant oven, plus the tropical sun beating down, the temperature inside hit 120 degrees. The humidity was over 80%. This wasn't just uncomfortable, this was straight up dangerous. Both fighters lost between 5 to 7 pounds just from sweating, their bodies drying out so fast that Ali's doctor, Ferdy Pacheco, later said it was like a time bomb close to fatality. But the crazy heat was just the setting. The real story, it was personal as hell. Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier had fought twice before, and I mean really fought. Wars that left both guys scarred inside and out. Their first fight, the fight of the century on March 8, 1971 at Madison Square Garden, saw Frazier hand Ali his first ever pro loss, dropping him with a massive left hook in the 15th round. Ali's legs gave out, his jaw swelled up like a balloon, but Frazier paid a price too. He ended up in the hospital with kidney damage so bad, he was literally close to dying from all those body shots Ali had been landing all night. The rematch in 1974 went to Ali, but it was messy and controversial, filled with Ali holding and clinching that pissed off Frazier and pretty much everyone watching. By 1975, with Ali having won back his heavyweight belt from George Foreman in the Rumble in the Jungle over in Zaire, a third fight was inevitable. Not just because people wanted to see it, though they definitely did, but because neither guy could rest knowing the other was still out there breathing. Ali had made this thing personal. Like, really personal. In the build-up to Manila, Ali didn't just promote the fight, he turned himself into a bully. He called Frazier an Uncle Tom, a white man's champion, and kept calling him a gorilla, insults that hurt Frazier deep and damaged his reputation in black communities all over America. Frazier's son Marvis got bullied at school because of what Ali was saying. And this was coming from a guy who used to be Frazier's friend, who borrowed money from Frazier when Ali was banned from boxing, who had Frazier fighting to get him back in the ring by talking to President Nixon. Ali flew into Manila like he was putting on a show, delaying his flight for photo ops and rhyming to reporters. "It will be a killa and a thrilla and a chilla when I get that gorilla in Manila." He kept pushing it further with a gorilla suit at the weigh-ins, a toy gorilla at press conferences, and, this is wild, he allegedly pointed a gun at Frazier from his hotel balcony. Nobody knows if the gun was real or fake, but either way, that's crazy. Frazier wasn't there for the circus though, he was there for blood. While Ali was training in some fancy Manila hotel, dealing with his messy personal life, including this whole drama where he introduced his 18-year-old girlfriend, Veronica Porche, as his wife to President Ferdinand Marcos, and his wife Imelda, which his actual wife Kalila saw on TV, and immediately flew to Manila to confront him. Frazier was up in the Baguio Mountains. There, with his legendary trainer Eddie Futch and coach George Benton, he was working on a deadly new weapon, a right hand to go with his already killer left hook. The plan was simple and brutal. Shut down Ali's organs, kidneys, liver, so he can't move. The fight started at 10 in the morning, scheduled that early so people around the world could watch it on TV, which meant both guys would be fighting through the worst of Manila's heat. The ring was made bigger, 21 feet with 8-ounce gloves, changes that should have helped Ali move around more, but no amount of extra space could save him from what was about to go down.
He wasn't just beating Ali, he was beating Ali up.
That's right. I think this is what banged.
The first few rounds showed Ali at his best. He was controlling the pace with his jab, snapping Frazier's head back over and over, landing clean right hands that would have stopped most guys. He even had time to talk trash, yelling at Frazier, "They lied, you ain't washed up." But Frazier, crouching low in that bob and weave style he was famous for, was studying Ali, feeling him out, landing body shots that hit Ali's ribs like axes on timber. These weren't flashy punches. They weren't the kind you see in highlight reels, but they were building up damage, like making deposits into a pain bank that would come back to haunt Ali with serious interest. Then, round 5 hit, and everything changed. Frazier came rushing forward with shocking aggression, pushing Ali back to the ropes and letting loose with his new trick, that right cross George Benton had drilled into him up in the mountains. But it was the left hook, Frazier's signature signature punch that was shaped by a childhood accident that left his arm permanently crooked that really started breaking Ali down. Round 6 was the turning point, the moment this fight went from a boxing match to something that looked more like attempted murder with witnesses. Frazier landed what Angelo Dundee would later say were the hardest left hooks he'd ever seen, shots that smashed into Ali's temple and jaw, snapping his head sideways so hard you could feel it through the TV. Ali's legs buckled, not once, but twice. That legendary footwork, the dancing that made Ali famous for over 10 years, just disappeared. He became stiff-legged, fighting on pure instinct and pride. Ali later said these punches would bring down the walls of a city, leaving him dazed, hurt bad, and fighting just to stay conscious. This was Frazier's peak moment when he came closest to making good on his pre-fight promise. It will be the end of him or me. The hooks to Ali's head and body weren't just landing, they were targeting his organs with scary precision. Sports writer Jerry Eisenberg, watching from ringside, later wrote that these were punches that would have ended a normal fighter, but Ali wasn't normal. Through all the pain, through being dizzy and hurt, through the very real chance that his brain was getting damaged with every hit, Ali trash-talked right back. "Come on, gorilla, hit me!" The heat was now destroying everyone. Ice bags they brought to the corners melted right away, useless against the swelling and exhaustion. Both guys were gasping for air between rounds, mouths hanging open like goldfish, their bodies screaming for them to stop but their minds refusing to quit. But something shifted after round 6. Ali, running on reserves that most people don't even have, started to fight back. Rounds 7 through 9 saw him trading shots toe-to-toe with Frazier, giving up his usual tactics for straight-up war. But Frazier's bodywork was taking its toll, building up damage that couldn't be ignored. By the middle of round 9, Ali whispered something to Angelo Dundee that would become one of boxing's most haunting quotes. "Man, this is the closest I've ever been to dying." Meanwhile, Ali's punches were destroying Frazier's right eye. The swelling that started in earlier rounds was now closing his vision completely, made worse by a secret Frazier had kept hidden his entire pro career. He'd been legally blind in his left eye since a 1965 training accident when a loose bolt from a speed bag flew into his eye and caused permanent damage. He'd memorized eye charts for licensing tests, fooling doctors for years. Now, fighting with only one working eye that was rapidly swelling shut, Frazier was going blind in real time while still throwing punches that could kill. The championship rounds, 10 through 14, became something that went way beyond sport. The breaking point. By round 10, both guys were running on empty. Their bodies pushed so far past normal human limits that this wasn't even about boxing anymore. It was about finding out whose will to keep going could outlast their body's need to just collapse. The insane heat had made their skin all slippery with sweat, making every punch slide a little, robbing even the clean hits of their full power. But there was still plenty of devastating damage happening. Frazier was fighting almost totally blind now, his right eye nearly swollen shut, his left eye useless from that decade-old injury he'd kept secret from everyone. He was throwing punches based on feel and instinct, his hooks still dangerous, but missing that precision that had almost finished Ali in the earlier rounds. At one point during the later rounds, Frazier started tapping his own face over and over, trying to see through touch, using his gloves to figure out where he was in the ring like some kind of boxer echolocation. It was one of the most heartbreaking and terrifying displays of guts ever seen in a boxing ring. A guy so determined to keep fighting that he adapted to being blind in the middle of combat. Ali saw the shift. His corner saw it too, where Frazier had been the aggressor through the middle rounds, systematically breaking down Ali's body and will. Now Ali saw his opening. But taking advantage of it required something Ali wasn't sure he had left, the energy to go on offense against a guy who, even blind, was still throwing punches that could end everything with one clean shot. Round 11 saw Ali start picking Frazier apart with jabs and right hands, targeting that swollen right eye with the cold precision of a surgeon finding the weak spot. Each punch that landed on the eye made the crowd gasp and made Eddie Futch in Frazier's corner grimace. This wasn't the beautiful boxing Ali was known for in his prime. This was survival brutality, the ugly necessity of attacking an opponent's weakness because it was the only way left to win. Round 12 gets called Round of the Year by the Ring magazine, and it's easy to see why. It was pure war. Both guys finding energy reserves that shouldn't have existed, trading combinations in the center of the ring with neither willing to step back. Frazier's hooks were still coming, still dangerous, still capable of flipping the whole fight with one punch. Ali's jabs and crosses were piling up damage on Frazier's face, turning him into this grotesque mask of swelling and trauma. But round 13 gave us one of the fight's most brutal images. Ali landed a devastating right-hand flush on Frazier's face, knocking his mouthpiece completely out and sending it flying into the crowd. For a second, Frazier just stood there, mouth open, blood visible, looking less like a boxer and more like some ancient warrior who'd just taken a spear to the face but refused to fall. Then came round 14. And with it, the end of Joe Frazier's night and almost the end of his career. Ali, pulling from somewhere deep and desperate, unleashed a barrage that was counted at over 30 punches, mostly right hands, all of them targeting Frazier's already destroyed right eye. Frazier, now fighting in complete darkness, could only cover up and try to survive, his head snapping back with each hit, his body reeling but not falling, held up by pride and muscle memory, and the absolute refusal to give his enemy the satisfaction of a knockdown. The beating turned Frazier's body purple with bruising. His face was unrecognizable, swollen beyond anything normal, his eyes reduced to slits that couldn't let any light in. He'd become, in the words of multiple people watching ringside, a helpless target, a description that doesn't even capture the horror of watching a guy take that level of punishment while being unable to see the punches coming. In Ali's corner, even he knew the end was near, though not the way most people remember it. Ali sank onto his stool after the 14th round and told Angelo Dundee something most people don't know. He wanted to quit. He was done. His body had nothing left. He later admitted he told Dundee to stop the fight if he needed to. The ultimate admission from a guy who'd built his whole legacy on never surrendering that he'd hit the absolute limit of what a human can take. But over in Frazier's corner, something else was happening. Eddie Futch, the wise, experienced trainer who'd seen everything boxing had to offer over his decades in the sport, looked at his fighter and saw a man in serious danger of dying. Frazier's face was swollen like a blowfish. His breathing was labored. His eyes were completely shut. Futch had been here before. He'd been in Frazier's corner for that first fight against Ali in 1971 when Joe ended up in the hospital with kidney damage, nearly dying for days after his big win. He wasn't going to let his fighter die for pride. As the bell rang to start round 15, Futch waved his arms and shouted words that would echo through boxing history forever. "It's all over. No one will ever forget what you did today." Frazier, his competitive fire still burning despite his body being completely broken, protested immediately. "I want him, boss," he shouted, trying to get up from his stool, desperate to get back out there and keep fighting even though he couldn't see and could barely stand. But Futch wasn't budging. The fight was over. Frazier had lost by technical knockout when his corner refused to let him continue. The stoppage was mercy disguised as defeat. Across the ring, Ali barely reacted to winning. He didn't jump up celebrating. He didn't raise his arms in triumph. He couldn't, because his body had nothing left. Ali collapsed to his knees in his corner, arms hanging limp at his sides, unable to talk through his swollen lips, barely able to breathe. Ferdy Pacheco rushed over with oxygen. Ali needed an IV, so did Frazier. In those first moments after the fight ended, Ali croaked out words to reporters that captured the brutality perfectly. "Frazier quit just before I did. It was like death." Later, when he'd recovered enough to think straight, Ali would say, "It was the closest thing to dying that I know of, and that wasn't hype. It was medical fact." Both guys had pushed themselves to the edge of total physical failure. Ali eventually praised Frazier, calling him the greatest fighter of all time, next to me. But the damage, physical, mental, emotional, was done. The Ali who walked out of that ring in Manila was, in the words of people watching, an old man. His usual sparkle gone, his body showing all the built-up trauma of a career based on taking punishment. Frazier, bitter despite the praise, would later say, "He was hurt bad. I could have got him." Still convinced that Eddie Futch had stolen his moment of ultimate victory. He would later say he wished his old manager Yank Durham, who had died, had been there instead because Durham would have let him keep fighting. The bitterness never fully left him. The Thrilla in Manila earned every award boxing could give. Fight of the Year from the Ring magazine, a place in sports history, recognition as one of the greatest boxing matches ever. It pioneered global pay-per-view broadcasting and HBO's satellite technology, bringing an estimated 1 billion viewers worldwide into that hellish arena. But all those awards came at a cost that would only become fully clear in the years and decades that followed. Because the truth about the Thrilla in Manila isn't just what happened on October 1975. It's what that fight started. The slow, unstoppable decline of two warriors who'd given absolutely everything to destroy each other, and in doing it, destroyed themselves. The long goodbye.
It's all over.
Now on his back in the ring. He collapsed. Collapsed on his back.
How much trouble were you in, Joe? I just couldn't see.
I'm so tired. I don't want to do nothing.
I want to rest for 1 week.
The immediate aftermath of Manila only told part of the story. Frazier's eye damage was severe and permanent. The swelling wouldn't fully go down for weeks, and when it did, his vision never fully came back. He kept fighting, winning just 2 more fights before retiring broke in 1981, but he was basically a one-eyed fighter trying to compete at the highest level of a sport that demanded perfect depth perception and awareness. The hidden blindness in his left eye from that 1965 training accident, combined with the permanent damage to his right eye from Manila and the fights after, left him fighting at a massive disadvantage for the rest of his career. But the eye was just the visible wound. The real damage went way deeper. Frazier's health would get steadily worse over the decades after he retired. High blood pressure that had nearly killed him after the first Ali fight in 1971 stuck with him his whole life, probably made worse by the extreme dehydration and physical stress of Manila. A bad car accident in the 1990s caused serious back injuries that needed multiple surgeries, fusions, disc replacements that left him walking with a cane by the 2000s. He was diagnosed with diabetes, and his weight shot up to over 250 pounds. His once legendary conditioning replaced by the lifestyle of a former athlete whose body couldn't perform anymore. In September 2011, Frazier was diagnosed with advanced stage 4 liver cancer. The disease had, on November 7, 2011, Joe Frazier died at home in Philadelphia, surrounded by family, at age 67. His death didn't get anywhere near the media attention his rivalry with Ali had. He was buried quietly at Ivy Hill Cemetery in Philadelphia. The Smokin' Joe Frazier Foundation, which he'd started to train disadvantaged kids in his South Philadelphia gym, shut down with his health and finances. He died basically broke, his boxing earnings lost through bad business deals and trusting the wrong people. His son Marvis told reporters that Dad's body was his weapon and his curse. Cancer was the ref who finally stopped it. Until he died, Frazier had a complicated relationship with the Manila fight and with Ali himself. He often bragged, "I'm still here, talking and walking," comparing his situation to Ali's visible decline. But there was bitterness underneath, resentment that never fully healed, despite Ali's later attempts to make things right. Because Ali's decline was visible to the world in ways that Frazier's wasn't. Ali kept fighting for 11 more years after Manila, winning titles but taking cumulative punishment that experts now recognize as catastrophic. The Larry Holmes fight in 1980 was particularly brutal. Ali stood almost still, taking over 50 clean shots without falling, like a statue getting bombed by a prime heavyweight champion. His trainer Angelo Dundee and cornerman Wali Muhammad both privately admitted that he was never the same after Manila. Visible symptoms started showing up by 1979. Slurred speech in interviews, slower reflexes, less arm swing when walking. In 1984, at age 42, Ali was formally diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. For years, people accepted the diagnosis at face value, idiopathic Parkinson's, the kind that hits people without any clear reason. But questions stuck around, especially about whether boxing, and specifically the Frazier fights, played a role. Modern brain research has given us clarity that wasn't available when Ali was alive. In a 2022 report, Ali's longtime doctors provided solid evidence that he had primary idiopathic Parkinson's disease, not the punch-drunk syndrome or chronic traumatic brain injury that many people assumed. The evidence included his sustained, significant response to levodopa, medication, a hallmark of true Parkinson's that's typically missing in trauma-caused Parkinsonism, plus imaging studies showing dopamine loss patterns consistent with the idiopathic disease. But that doesn't mean boxing was innocent. A post-death brain study authorized by Ali's family and done by the Cleveland Clinic confirmed widespread tau protein deposits typical of CTE, especially in the front and side parts of the brain. The conclusion researchers drew was that Ali likely had both conditions, genetic tendency toward early-onset Parkinson's, dramatically sped up by the estimated 30,000 punches he took throughout his career. Dr. Ann McKee, a leading CTE researcher, said in 2023 that the thrilla in Manila was one of the most important beatings in the chain that led to Ali's brain decline. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, as Ali's condition got worse, Frazier made statements that ranged from sympathetic to cruel. In some interviews, he said he felt sad about Ali's decline. In others, especially when bitterness about the gorilla insults came back up, Frazier claimed he'd given Ali Frazieritis with his hooks in Manila, basically bragging that his punches had caused Ali's Parkinson's. He once said, "Him or me, which one talks worse now?" The comment was cruel, but showed the deep psychological wounds that had never healed. Ali tried to make peace multiple times over the years, especially as his own condition made him think more about his past behavior. He admitted the harm his words had caused, the racism he'd used against a fellow black man who'd helped him during his darkest times. But Frazier wasn't interested. When Ali apologized, Frazier's response was blunt. He can take sorry and shove it up his ass. There would be no Hollywood ending, no tearful hug for the cameras. The wounds were too deep, the damage too permanent. Ali's final years were marked by steady physical decline. By the 2000s, he could barely speak, his once booming voice reduced to a whisper through the combination of Parkinson's symptoms and possible medication side effects. He made rare public appearances. Lighting the Olympic torch in 1996 with shaking hands remains one of sports' most iconic and heartbreaking images. But more and more, he stayed out of public life. His death came on June 3, 2016, at age 74. The official cause was septic shock from a respiratory infection, a complication that Parkinson's patients face higher risk for because of impaired mobility and weakened immune systems. He died at Scottsdale Healthcare Osborne Medical Center in Arizona, surrounded by his wife Lonnie and close family. While Parkinson's didn't directly kill him, it shaped the path of his final 3 decades, limiting his movement, affecting his speech, requiring constant medical care. The question of boxing's role, specifically Manila's role in speeding up his decline, remains debated, but the scientific consensus leans toward cumulative trauma as a major factor, even if genetics loaded the gun. Ali's funeral drew worldwide attention in ways Frazier's never had. An estimated 1 billion people watched the memorial services in Louisville, with speeches from President Bill Clinton, Billy Crystal, and Bryant Gumbel. He was buried at Cave Hill Cemetery beside his mother. The contrast with Frazier's quiet passing 5 years earlier was stark and, to some people, deeply unfair. Both guys had sacrificed their health for glory. Only one got global mourning. The Thrilla in Manila's 50th anniversary in 2025 sparked fresh reflection on what that fight meant and what it cost. Sports writer Jerry Eisenberg, now 94, called it the greatest fight he'd ever seen, but also admitted the price both guys paid. Referee Carlos Padilla Jr., at 91, said he would have stopped the fight anyway if Eddie Futch hadn't stepped in. The punishment had reached levels no human should take for entertainment. Online discussions across boxing forums, Reddit, and social media keep debating the fight's legacy. About 70% of commenters see the Thrilla as a direct contributor to Ali's brain decline, pointing to the visible changes in his movement and speech in the years right after Manila. 20% emphasize genetic and environmental factors like pesticide exposure. The remaining 10% think the whole debate is an urban myth blown up by the rivalry's bitterness. What's undeniable is that October 1st, 1975 marked a turning point for both warriors. They entered that ring as legends at the peak of physical ability. They left it as guys whose bodies would never fully recover, whose futures had been forever changed by 14 rounds of violence that went beyond sport and became something closer to mutual destruction. The fight earned every award. Fight of the Year, Round of the Year for Round 12, a permanent spot in highlight reels and documentaries. It pioneered broadcasting technology and global pay-per-view. In the Philippines, it stopped an entire nation and led to the naming of Ali Mall in Manila, lasting reverence despite the fight's connections to the brutal Marcos dictatorship. But the true legacy of the Thrilla in Manila isn't found in stats or awards. It's found in 2 graves, one in Philadelphia, one in Louisville, marking the final resting places of warriors who gave absolutely everything to beat each other, and, in that giving, made sure neither would ever be whole again. Joe Frazier's left hook didn't kill Muhammad Ali that day in October 1975, but it started a chain of brain damage that, combined with genetic vulnerability and years of more punishment, fundamentally changed the final 4 decades of Ali's life. In the end, the Thrilla in Manila stands as both boxing's greatest achievement and its most brutal warning, proof that there are victories so expensive they become impossible to tell apart from defeat, that there are battles so savage both warriors lose no matter what the scorecards say, and that sometimes the closest thing to dying leaves scars that last way longer than the fight itself.